I'm done playing house with a loser like you. Marcus knows how to treat a real woman. My wife Sarah thought she was talking to a pushover who'd just roll over and accept defeat. She had no idea she was about to learn the most expensive lesson of her life about underestimating the quiet guy who notices everything. Those words came through my phone at 9:47 p.m. on a Thursday night in October. My wife Sarah, calling from what she claimed was a marketing conference in Las Vegas. But I already knew she was lying. I'd known for months. My name is David Chen, and at 38, I'd built a successful cybersecurity consulting firm in Austin, Texas. I specialized in protecting companies from internal threats, the kind that come from people you trust most. People like employees who sell out their employers. People like spouses who think they're smarter than their partners. Sarah had no idea what she just walked into. I've been seeing Marcus for 6 months now, she continued, her voice dripping with the confidence she used to close million-dollar advertising deals. He's everything you're not. Ambitious, powerful, someone who actually matters in this city. I'm moving in with him this weekend. Marcus Blackwell, her boss at Pinnacle Creative, Austin's largest advertising agency. The man who'd been promoted to creative director just 8 months ago, right around the time Sarah started working late every night. I sat in my home office, surrounded by multiple monitors displaying code and security protocols, listening to my wife destroy our 8-year marriage over a phone call. But here's what Sarah didn't know, and what Marcus was about to find out the hard way. I'm not just any cybersecurity expert. I'm the kind who gets called when Fortune 500 companies discover their most trusted employees have been stealing their secrets. I know how to track digital footprints that people think they've erased. I know how to follow money trails that others think are invisible. And for the past 4 months, while Sarah thought she was playing me for a fool, I'd been building the most comprehensive case of corporate espionage and personal betrayal you've ever seen. She thought she was leaving me for a winner. She had no idea she was about to watch both their worlds collapse around them. This is the story of how 2 people who thought they were smarter than everyone else learned why you should never underestimate the quiet guy in the corner. Sarah and I met 9 years ago at a tech conference in San Francisco. She was Pinnacle Creative's rising star, sent to scout emerging technologies for their Fortune 500 clients. I was presenting on corporate data protection, ironic, considering what was coming. She was magnetic, the kind of woman who could walk into any room and immediately become its center. Blonde hair, sharp business suits, and a laugh that made everyone want to be part of her inner circle. I was the opposite, methodical, analytical, more comfortable with code than crowds. But we clicked. She appreciated my attention to detail, my ability to solve complex problems that others couldn't. I was drawn to her ambition, her fearless pursuit of bigger deals and better opportunities. We balanced each other perfectly, or so I thought. We married 2 years later in a ceremony that made the Austin social pages. Sarah insisted on the works, designer dress, exclusive venue, guest list packed with advertising executives and tech entrepreneurs. Image matters in my business, she'd say. We need to look like winners. Our house in Westlake reflected that philosophy. Modern architecture, smart home technology I'd installed myself, and a kitchen that Sarah used primarily for hosting client dinners. Everything curated for success, including our marriage. For 6 years, we played the part perfectly. The power couple at charity galas, weekend trips to her favorite resorts, carefully staged social media posts showing our perfect life. I built my consulting firm while she climbed Pinnacle's corporate ladder. But success changes people differently. My business grew through referrals and reputation, quiet, steady growth built on results. Sarah's world demanded constant performance, bigger wins, flashier achievements. She started staying later at the office, attending more industry events, always chasing the next promotion. You don't understand the pressure I'm under, she'd say when I suggested we spend weekends together instead of at networking events. Marcus expects excellence from his team. He's grooming me for something big. Marcus. Even then, his name came up constantly. The brilliant creative director who'd revolutionized Pinnacle's approach to digital campaigns. The man who saw Sarah's real potential when others didn't. I should have paid more attention to how her eyes lit up when she mentioned him. What Sarah never understood about my work is that cybersecurity isn't just about protecting systems. It's about understanding human behavior. The weakest link in any security system isn't technology, it's people. And people always leave digital breadcrumbs. 4 months before that devastating phone call, I'd made a discovery that changed everything. Sarah had asked me to fix her laptop, something about email syncing issues, routine technical support between spouses, or so it seemed. While diagnosing the problem, I found something interesting. Her browser history showed multiple logins to a cloud storage service I didn't recognize. When I dug deeper, I discovered she'd been accessing Pinnacle's secure client files from our home network, downloading campaign strategies and financial projections for companies that weren't her assigned accounts. At first, I thought it was ambitious overreach, Sarah staying ahead by studying successful campaigns. But the pattern was wrong. She was specifically targeting files related to Pinnacle's biggest competitors. Then I found the encrypted folder. Sarah thought she was being clever with basic password protection. But when your husband specializes in digital forensics, Marcus and Me 2024 isn't exactly uncrackable. Inside were screenshots of confidential client communications, copies of Pinnacle's strategic plans, and most damning of all, email exchanges with someone using an encrypted messaging service. The kind of communication setup you use when you don't want your employer monitoring your conversations. I could have confronted her immediately. But years of investigating corporate espionage had taught me patience. Premature confrontation destroys evidence and spooks the guilty parties. Better to document everything and build an unshakable case. So I did what I do best. I started monitoring. I installed discrete network monitoring software on our home router, the kind that tracks all device activity without being detected. I set up automated backups of her cloud storage accounts. I even implemented keystroke logging on her laptop, disguised as a security update she never questioned. For 4 months, I watched my wife systematically steal from her employer while planning to steal from me. Every late night at the office was actually at Marcus's downtown condo. Every weekend team-building exercise was a romantic getaway funded by corporate secrets. They thought they were building their future together. They had no idea they were building my case against them. Looking back, the signs had been there for over a year. I just chose to trust instead of investigate, a mistake I wouldn't make again. It started with small changes. Sarah, who'd always been meticulous about our shared calendar, began having mysterious gaps in her schedule. Client meeting ran long, or last-minute strategy session with Marcus's team. Always plausible explanations for someone in her position. Then came the physical changes. New gym memberships, expensive lingerie I never saw her wear, subtle updates to her appearance that made her look younger, more vibrant. When I complimented her new style, she'd deflect. Marcus thinks the team should project more energy. Image is everything in advertising. Our conversations gradually shifted from partnership to performance updates. Instead of sharing her day, she'd brief me like a client. Pinnacle landed the Henderson Group account. Marcus is impressed with my contribution. Everything revolved around Marcus's opinions, Marcus's expectations, Marcus's vision for the agency. Physical intimacy became scheduled, perfunctory. Sarah approached our bedroom like another item on her task list, going through motions while mentally elsewhere. When I tried to reconnect, she'd claim exhaustion from carrying the entire creative team. The final red flag was money. Sarah had always been a careful spender, but suddenly our credit card statements showed expensive restaurants I'd never been to, weekend trips to places she claimed were industry conferences, and charges at high-end hotels in Austin when she was supposedly working late. When I questioned the expenses, she got defensive. These are investments in my career, David. Unlike your little computer business, I need to maintain relationships and appearances. Marcus says a lot of things. I'd interrupted, finally showing frustration. Don't be jealous just because he understands ambition, she'd snapped back. Not everyone can hide behind a computer screen their whole life. That comment stung because it revealed how she really saw me. Not as a successful entrepreneur, but as a social inadequate she'd outgrown. The quiet tech guy who'd served his purpose but was now holding her back from her real destiny. If she'd left it at that, maybe we could have divorced civilly. But Sarah couldn't resist taking more than just my dignity, the corporate espionage, the systematic theft of Pinnacle's intellectual property, the way she was using my network and resources to betray her employer. that crossed lines that went beyond personal betrayal. She'd turned our home into a crime scene, and me into an unwitting accomplice. What followed was the most methodical investigation of my career. Unlike previous cases where I was hired to find corporate infiltrators, this time the infiltrator was sleeping next to me every night. The advantage was unprecedented access. The challenge was maintaining operational security while gathering evidence that would hold up in both criminal and civil court. I started with network traffic analysis. Every device connected to our home Wi-Fi was now being monitored and logged. I could see exactly when Sarah's laptop accessed Pinnacle's servers, how long she spent downloading files, and where those files were subsequently transmitted. Her pattern was sophisticated but predictable. She'd wait until I was asleep or away on client visits, then access Pinnacle's cloud-based project management system. She'd download campaign briefs, client contact lists, and financial projections, always focusing on accounts that competed directly with Marcus's personal consulting clients. Because that's what I'd discovered Marcus was really doing. While serving as Pinnacle's creative director, he was secretly running a boutique consulting firm on the side, selling strategic insights to smaller agencies who couldn't afford Pinnacle's services. Sarah was his inside source, providing the intelligence that made his recommendations so eerily accurate. The encrypted messaging between them revealed everything. Marcus had approached Sarah 8 months ago, not for romance initially, but for information. "You're wasted at Pinnacle," his early messages read. "Someone with your insights could make serious money in the right partnership." The seduction came later, a calculated move to ensure Sarah's loyalty and silence. By the time they became physically involved, she was already in too deep to back out. I documented every stolen file, every unauthorized access, every violation of Pinnacle's confidentiality agreements. But I needed more than digital evidence. I needed to prove intent and financial benefit. That's when I started following the money. Sarah had opened a new bank account, one she'd never mentioned. Monthly deposits from MBC Consulting, Marcus's shell company, showed her compensation for the intelligence she provided. Over 6 months, she'd received $47,000 in payments that she'd never reported as income. But the real revelation came when I traced Marcus's client list. Every company he consulted for had mysteriously started winning pitches against Pinnacle. Campaigns that Pinnacle had spent months developing were being undercut by competitors who seemed to know exactly what strategies to counter. I now had evidence of a conspiracy that had cost Pinnacle millions in lost revenue and compromised their competitive position in the Austin market. The personal betrayal had led me to uncover a corporate crime that would destroy both their careers and potentially land them in federal prison. The beauty of having complete digital surveillance was timing. I knew exactly when Sarah would make her next move, and I was ready. 3 days after her Vegas phone call, she texted me, "Coming by the house Saturday morning to get my things. Please don't make this difficult." I responded simply, "I'll be here." What she didn't know was that I'd spent those 3 days preparing the house like a crime scene investigation. Hidden cameras in every room, legal in Texas when it's your own property, digital recording equipment, and most importantly, a complete backup of every device she'd used for her corporate espionage. Saturday morning, Sarah arrived with Marcus. Seeing him in person for the first time was almost anticlimactic. Average height, expensive clothes trying too hard to project success, and the kind of arrogant smile that belonged on a used car salesman. "David," he said, extending his hand like we were meeting at a business conference. "I've heard so much about you. Sarah says you're quite the computer expert." I shook his hand without expression. "I specialize in digital security, protecting companies from internal threats." The irony was lost on neither of them, but they both forced smiles. Sarah moved through our house like a stranger, pointing out items for Marcus to carry to his BMW designer clothes, jewelry, artwork she'd insisted we buy for investment purposes. Everything chosen for image over substance, just like her new relationship. "We should discuss the financial arrangements," she said when they'd loaded most of her belongings. "I assume your lawyer will be reasonable about the asset division." "What lawyer?" I asked. She exchanged a glance with Marcus. "David, we're adults. We can handle this professionally. I'm not looking to take you to the cleaners, but I am entitled to half of what we built together." "Including the house?" Especially the house, Marcus interjected. Sarah deserves her fair share of the appreciation. I nodded thoughtfully. You're right. She deserves exactly what she's earned. I walked to my home office and returned with a tablet. Before we discuss asset division, there's something you both should see. The first image was a screenshot of Sarah's unauthorized access to Pinnacle's client database. The timestamp showed 2:17 a.m. 3 weeks earlier, while I was supposedly asleep upstairs. Sarah's face went white. David, what is this? This is you stealing proprietary information from your employer, I said calmly. This next one shows you forwarding that information to an encrypted email account. Marcus stepped forward, trying to project authority. Now wait a minute. And this, I continued, swiping to the next screen, shows a deposit of $8,000 into your secret account from MBC Consulting. That's Marcus's company, in case you were wondering. The silence stretched for 30 seconds before Sarah found her voice. You've been spying on me? I've been protecting our network from security breaches, I corrected. It's what I do for a living. The fact that my own wife was the breach was unexpected. Marcus had gone from arrogant to calculating. This is all very interesting, but we should probably discuss this with lawyers present. I smiled for the first time that morning. Absolutely. I'm sure the FBI's cybercrime division would love to hear your legal perspective on corporate espionage. The next 20 minutes were the most honest conversation Sarah and I had shared in years. Marcus tried to leave immediately after my FBI comment, but I'd positioned myself between him and the door. I think you should stay, I said quietly. This concerns you directly. Sarah was pacing our living room, her carefully constructed composure cracking. David, you don't understand the situation. Marcus and I, we have plans. I understand the situation perfectly, I interrupted. You've been stealing from Pinnacle for 8 months, funneling confidential information to Marcus's side business, and planning to divorce me while hiding income from both the IRS and our marriage. It's not that simple, Marcus said, his voice losing its earlier confidence. The advertising industry is more complex than you realize. Information sharing is corporate espionage, I finished. The word you're looking for is corporate espionage, and it carries a federal prison sentence of up to 10 years. Sarah stopped pacing. Prison? David, this is about business strategy, not. I opened a folder on the tablet, showing them bank records. Sarah, you've received $47,000 in unreported income from Marcus's company. That's tax evasion. Marcus, your consulting firm has won contracts worth over $300,000 by using stolen Pinnacle intelligence. That's wire fraud. The legal terms seemed to hit Sarah harder than the personal betrayal had. She'd always prided herself on being smart, sophisticated, above the messy consequences that affected other people. What do you want? Marcus asked bluntly. I want honesty, I said. For once in the past 8 months, I want complete honesty about what you've done and what you plan to do. Sarah sat down heavily on our couch, the fight going out of her. We were going to start our own agency. Marcus has connections, I have the creative experience, and together we could have built something bigger than Pinnacle. Using stolen client lists and proprietary strategies, I added. Using our knowledge and relationships, she corrected. But the distinction sounded hollow even to her. Marcus was checking his phone, probably calculating damage control. Look, David, we're all professionals here. Maybe we can work something out that benefits everyone. What kind of arrangement did you have in mind? You keep quiet about the Pinnacle situation. Sarah files for a clean divorce, and everyone moves on with their lives. No harm, no foul. I almost laughed. You want me to ignore federal crimes in exchange for losing half my assets in a divorce? You don't have to lose anything, Sarah said quickly. We could structure the settlement so you keep the house, most of the investments. I just want a clean break and the freedom to start over. With Marcus? With Marcus, she confirmed. I looked at both of them, these two people who'd planned to build their future on theft and betrayal, now scrambling to minimize consequences they'd never considered. Here's what's going to happen, I said finally. Sarah, you're going to resign from Pinnacle immediately and confess to HR about the information you've stolen. Marcus, you're going to dissolve MBC Consulting and return every penny you've made from Pinnacle's intellectual property. And if we don't, Marcus asked, then I send everything I've gathered to the FBI, the IRS, and Pinnacle's legal department, all at the same time. The room fell silent except for the sound of Sarah crying. What happened next surprised even me. Marcus pulled out his phone and made a call right there in my living room. Jason? It's Marcus. We need to accelerate the timeline. No, there's been a complication. Just transfer everything now. He hung up and looked at me with something approaching respect. You're good, David, but you're not the only one who knows how to plan ahead. Within minutes, my phone was buzzing with alerts from the financial monitoring apps I use to track our accounts. Someone was attempting to access our investment portfolios, trying to execute transfers I'd never authorized. Sarah gave me all your account information months ago, Marcus explained casually. We've been waiting for the right moment to liquidate everything. Consider this the right moment. Sarah looked genuinely shocked. Marcus, that wasn't the plan. We agreed that I'd take care of the financial arrangements, he said coldly. I'm taking care of them. I watched the attempted transfers fail, one by one, as my multi-factor authentication systems blocked each unauthorized access. But Marcus's betrayal of Sarah was revealing something I hadn't expected. How many other women have you done this to? I asked. His smile was answer enough, but Sarah's expression was devastating. For the first time, she was seeing Marcus the way I'd seen him from the beginning, a predator who used romance as a weapon. Jessica Chen from the Henderson Group account, I continued, pieces falling into place. Amanda Rodriguez from Pinnacle's Phoenix office. You have a type, don't you, Marcus? Ambitious women with access to valuable information. Sarah's face had gone completely pale. Marcus, tell me that's not true. Business is business, Sarah. You're all beautiful, talented women who deserved better than what you had. I simply provided opportunities. I pulled up another folder on my tablet, one I'd prepared but hoped not to use. I reached out to Jessica and Amanda yesterday. They're both very interested in sharing their experiences with you, Marcus. Especially Jessica, who's been dealing with IRS fraud investigations for the past 6 months. The predator's confidence was finally cracking. You're bluffing. Jessica's divorce attorney has a very interesting file about MBC Consulting. Amanda's former employer in Phoenix is preparing a criminal complaint for industrial espionage. You've left quite a trail across the Southwest. Sarah was staring at Marcus like she'd never seen him before. You told me I was different. You said what we had was special. You were useful, he said with brutal honesty, just like the others. That's when Sarah made the choice that changed everything. She looked at me with something approaching her old self, the woman I'd fallen in love with 9 years ago. David, I'll testify against him. I'll tell you everything about what we did, how he recruited me, all of it. Marcus stood up abruptly. Sarah, don't be stupid. You're as guilty as I am. Maybe, she said quietly, but I'm not going down alone for your decade-long con game. The dynamic in the room had completely shifted. Marcus was no longer the confident manipulator, and Sarah was no longer his willing accomplice. She was a victim who'd finally realized she'd been played. But I was still the one holding all the cards. 3 days later, we all sat in the conference room of Austin's most prestigious law firm. Sarah had hired her own attorney, separate from Marcus, after discovering the full scope of his previous schemes. My lawyer, Rebecca Torres, had spent the weekend reviewing every piece of evidence I'd collected. This is the most comprehensive corporate espionage case I've seen, she'd told me privately. The federal prosecutor is very interested. But before involving federal authorities, I wanted to see if we could resolve things more efficiently. Here's what I'm offering, I said, sliding documents across the conference table. Sarah, you resign from Pinnacle immediately, repay every penny you receive from Marcus, and testify fully about the information theft. In exchange, I don't pursue criminal charges, and our divorce settlement gives you $25,000 and nothing else. Sarah's lawyer started to object, but she stopped him. What about Marcus? Marcus dissolves MBC Consulting, returns all profits to the companies he defrauded, and leaves Austin permanently. He also agrees never to work in advertising or marketing again. Marcus's attorney, a nervous man who clearly hadn't expected this level of evidence, whispered urgently in his client's ear. "And if we don't agree?" Marcus asked. Rebecca opened her briefcase and removed a thick folder. "Then my client provides all evidence to the FBI, IRS, and every company you've defrauded. Based on the pattern of behavior across multiple states, you're looking at federal charges for wire fraud, tax evasion, and organized criminal conspiracy. Conservative estimate, 15 to 20 years in federal prison." The room was silent except for air conditioning and the sound of Marcus's lawyer frantically taking notes. "There's one more thing," I added. "I want signed confessions from both of you, detailing exactly how this scheme worked. Full disclosure of every company involved, every stolen document, every fraudulent transaction." "Why?" Sarah asked. "Because I'm keeping Pinnacle as a client. They deserve to know exactly how much damage was done and how to prevent it from happening again." Marcus's composure finally broke completely. "You bastard. You're destroying our lives over some corporate politics and a failed marriage." "I'm stopping a criminal enterprise," I corrected. "Sarah made her choice when she decided to steal from her employer. You made yours when you decided to prey on married women for corporate intelligence." Sarah signed first. Her confession was 12 pages long, detailing every file she'd stolen, every unauthorized access, every payment she'd received. She cried while signing it, but she signed. Marcus held out for another hour, consulting with his lawyer, making phone calls, trying to find some escape route that didn't exist. Finally, facing the reality of federal prison, he signed as well. "The transfers are already in motion," Rebecca announced. "Marcus's assets are being liquidated to pay restitution. Sarah's resignation letter has been submitted to Pinnacle. Both of you have 48 hours to complete all requirements, or the federal case moves forward." As they left the conference room, Sarah paused at the door. "David, I know this doesn't change anything, but I am sorry. Not just about getting caught, about all of it." I nodded. "I know you are." Marcus said nothing. He was already on his phone, probably calling another victim to warn them about the investigation closing in. After they left, Rebecca and I sat in the conference room reviewing the final documents. "You know," she said, "you could have pursued criminal charges and still gotten a favorable divorce settlement." "This was never about money," I replied. "It was about making sure they couldn't do this to anyone else." "And how does it feel, knowing it's over?" I thought about that for a moment, like solving a very complex puzzle, satisfying, but not exactly happy. The victory was complete, but it was still the end of my marriage to someone I'd once loved. 6 weeks after the settlement, the full scope of Marcus's operation became clear. Pinnacle's internal investigation, guided by Sarah's confession and my digital evidence, revealed that their competitor intelligence had been compromised for nearly 2 years. 18 major campaigns had been undermined by leaked strategies, costing the agency an estimated $4.2 million in lost revenue. But Marcus's network extended far beyond Austin. Using the financial records I'd traced, federal investigators discovered similar schemes in Phoenix, Dallas, and Denver. He'd recruited employees at major agencies in each city, using romance and career promises to gain access to proprietary information. The FBI's final count: 37 victims across 4 states, $2.8 million in fraudulent consulting fees, and estimated damages of over $15 million to the advertising agencies he'd targeted. Sarah's cooperation with the federal investigation kept her out of prison, but her career in advertising was over. She moved back to her hometown in Oklahoma, taking a position teaching business classes at a community college. The career she'd sacrificed everything for was gone, replaced by a quiet life she'd once considered beneath her ambitions. Marcus wasn't as fortunate. Despite his cooperation agreement, the pattern of organized fraud across state lines triggered federal charges that couldn't be plea bargained away. He received 8 years in federal prison and lifetime prohibition from working in advertising, marketing, or business consulting. More importantly, his conviction opened floodgates for civil lawsuits. Every agency he'd defrauded, every woman he'd manipulated, every company that had lost business due to his schemes, they all had legal standing to pursue damages. His financial ruin was complete and permanent. The most satisfying consequence came from an unexpected source. Jessica Chen, Marcus's first known victim, had used her divorce settlement to start her own boutique agency in San Antonio. When she learned about Marcus's conviction, she sent me a handwritten note. "Thank you for finally stopping him. I hope Sarah realizes how lucky she is that you chose justice over revenge." Pinnacle offered me a permanent position as director of corporate security, essentially building a department around preventing the kind of internal threats that Sarah and Marcus had represented. I accepted, finding purpose in protecting other companies from the betrayals I'd experienced firsthand. The irony wasn't lost on me. Sarah's betrayal had led to the most significant career opportunity of my life. The skills I'd developed catching her had become expertise that major corporations were willing to pay premium rates to acquire. By year's end, my consulting firm had grown from a one-person operation to a team of 12 specialists. We worked with companies across Texas and beyond, implementing security protocols that protected both digital assets and corporate culture. Sarah had been wrong about one thing. I wasn't hiding behind a computer screen. I was using technology to hold people accountable for their choices. 1 year after Sarah's phone call from Vegas, I stood in the conference room of my new offices overlooking downtown Austin. My security consulting firm had just signed its largest contract, a 3-year deal with a Fortune 500 company to overhaul their internal threat detection systems. The hollow feeling that had dominated the months following my divorce had gradually been replaced by something unexpected: genuine satisfaction with the work I was doing. Every case we solved, every corporate crime we prevented, felt like a small victory for truth over deception. My team had grown to include former FBI cybercrime investigators, corporate attorneys specializing in white-collar crime, and forensic accountants who could trace financial fraud through the most complex schemes. We'd become the firm that companies called when they suspected their most trusted employees were betraying them. The success was professionally fulfilling, but the personal transformation was more profound. I'd learned to trust my instincts about people, to value actions over words, and to build relationships based on demonstrated character rather than projected image. That's how I met Elena Rodriguez. She was the lead prosecutor on Marcus's federal case, a brilliant attorney who'd spent 5 years building expertise in corporate fraud. Our professional relationship had evolved into friendship, then into something deeper. Unlike Sarah, Elena appreciated quiet competence over flashy ambition. She understood that real strength often came from methodical preparation rather than dramatic gestures. "You saved dozens of people from what Marcus was doing," she'd told me over dinner the night his conviction was finalized. "Sarah and Marcus thought they were playing a game, but you understood it was about justice." 6 months later, Elena and I were planning our engagement. The relationship felt fundamentally different from my marriage to Sarah, built on shared values and mutual respect rather than complementary ambitions and social expectations. I still lived in the same house in Westlake, but I'd renovated it completely. Gone were the designer furnishings chosen for image, replaced by comfortable spaces that reflected who I actually was rather than who I thought I should appear to be. The final piece of closure came through an unexpected email from Sarah. She'd been teaching for 8 months, living quietly in Oklahoma, and had started seeing a therapist to understand how she'd made such destructive choices. "I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness," she wrote, "but I wanted you to know that I finally understand what I destroyed. You were the most honest person in my life, and I threw that away for someone who was lying to both of us. I hope you found happiness because you deserve better than what I gave you." I read the email twice, then deleted it without responding. Some chapters needed to close completely for new ones to begin properly. That evening, Elena and I sat on my back deck, watching the sunset over the Austin skyline. The mountains weren't as dramatic as Colorado's, but the view felt more honest. No grand gestures, just steady beauty that revealed itself to patient observation. "Any regrets?" she asked, knowing the anniversary was approaching. I considered the question seriously. "About the marriage ending? Number about how it ended? Sometimes. I wish Sarah had been capable of honesty before everything collapsed." "Would you have changed anything about how you handled it?" "I would have confronted her sooner about the warning signs, but I don't regret documenting everything or holding them accountable. Some people only learn from consequences." Elena nodded. "That's why we work well together. We both believe in justice over revenge." As the sun set over Austin, I realized that Sarah had been right about one thing. I had been underestimated, but not because I lacked ambition or backbone, because I understood that real power came from patience, preparation, and the willingness to do what was right even when it was difficult. The quiet guy in the corner had finally gotten his moment to speak, and everyone was listening.